What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment on these videos, and you can always check out the playlist for all the other stuff up here on the eye icon or the link in the description. So we've made it through putting, and we went through a lot of topics there. Of course, it was not exhaustive, but it was a lot of information. I hope that was very helpful to you. And now we're going to move on to chipping, which is the next longest shot in golf. We use putting for one of the shortest shots, and then the next longest shot to practice is chipping. And chipping is really an extension of putting. It's when we need to loft the ball into the air a little bit before it gets to rolling. The putter, we generally want to just roll it onto the green or even slightly off the green. We can putt it, but when we're not able to putt it, maybe there's too much grass or high grass or some kind of obstruction where we're not able to roll it on our target line anymore effectively, and we actually need to fly it onto the green surface before we allow it to roll. This is when we use the technique of chipping. Around the greens, typically your first option is going to be to putt. The putter is going to be the most consistent, the easiest club to hit because you don't actually have to hit it up into the air, you can just roll it. So your first option is going to be putting. There are times, however, when you're not able to putt the ball because there may be something in the way, so then you have to chip it. So in this video, we're going to go over the foundations of chipping, which are going to involve the grip, your stance and setup, and your posture. So we're going to start with the grip, and you want to employ with the left hand the same kind of grip that you would use in the long swing, and that is the pad is somewhat on top. However, in chipping, it is okay if this comes a little bit more through the hand, kind of like a putter, because we don't really need the club to turn over all that much. So if you feel comfortable having it more through your hand on chipping, this is fine. Now, this is not going to be conducive for a long swing, but for shorter swings where we need a lot of control, coming through the hand a bit more on chips is okay. I like to have mine in the same position as I do with my long swing, so I have the pad a little bit more on top, but maybe not quite as much. But the pad needs to be somewhat, so I can have it a little bit more through the hand if I want to. Once I have the left hand on there, you see how it goes like this. Just slightly on top there. And now I want to put my right hand on the club, and the right hand in this case is going to be similar to our longer grip again, except we're not going to be so much rolled over because we're not going to be hinging the club on a chip swing. We're just going to be hitting it very much like a putt. The swing is going to look very much like this. This is going to be a setup. So a chipping swing is going to look something like this. Notice I don't have a lot of wrist hinge there. It's a very straight shot. It almost looks like a putt, and that's the same swing and technique that I'm utilizing to chip the balls, is this motion right here. So we don't need a lot of wrist hinge, therefore I don't need the fact of my right hand to be so much more on top like before, where I can allow it to hinge. In this case, I like for the thumb of my left hand to be in between the pads of my right so that it fits kind of like this and then comes over like that. That feels good to me. It's somewhat behind. It doesn't have to be nearly rolled over as much, but somewhere about like this is good. It's pretty comfortable. Again, we also want the face square in our position when we're neutral. We don't want it turned like this or like this. When your hands are relaxedly coming out from your body at an angle, notice I don't have my arms straight out. It's very similar to a putt. And when I'm relaxed and in a pretty good position here, the club face is straight up and down. That means that lets me know that it's straight. It's my suggestion on chips that you choke the club down virtually to the shaft, where your first finger or your lowest hand is pretty close to the shaft, or maybe even touching the shaft. This gives you maximum control on short, touchy chips. If you grab it way down here, you're going to have a lot of leverage, but not nearly as much control, and the club is going to be heavier. But if you grab it down here and choke the club down some, you will have a lot more control, especially on touchy chips, and you'll be able to control the club face better because the club face is lighter from here. There's not as much shaft between your hands and the club, so it makes it lighter and easier to maneuver, and this will allow you to be a little bit more aggressive without having all of the force of the entire club length. Also, your grip pressure needs to remain rather light. It's going to be about the same as your regular swing. maybe even a little bit looser, but still about a 2 to a 4 on a scale of 0 to 10 or 1 to 10. So on the lighter side of gripping things. Very rarely do we actually want to choke the club down when we swing a golf club. We just can't move very well if our grip is too tight. And if you're tense, it's difficult to be fluid and tense, or relaxed and tense at the same time. Usually those two things don't work together. So you're either relaxed or you're tense. And tension is really a golf killer. It's very hard to play when tense, whether you're tense in your mind or tense in your body. So try to remain relaxed and have a kind of a light grip pressure. Now we're going to talk about stance and setup. When I chip the ball from my impact position. And that is, I stand like this when I chip it. I don't stand like this and then square up. I just go ahead and set up in my impact position. So my shoulders, my entire body is slightly open. It's very much facing the target. I like to think of chipping as throwing a ball or underhandedly tossing something, where you would toss it like this. Where you're very much open towards the target. If I were going to toss a ball at the camera, I would not be standing like this. I would want to stand somewhat like this. So that's the way that I approach chipping, from a very open position. And from an open position, this kind of locks my arm against my body. I'm already in my impact position. Remember, in the full swing, we talked about how your arm gets wrapped around when you change directions. It reaches that position anyway. So I chip from this position because I'm at one of my extreme positions in my golf swing. I'm either all the way back, I'm all the way as far wrapped around this way as I can be to this direction. And then I just get the club kind of straight. And luckily we can employ a similar technique that I told you in putting, because here I can have the shaft at 90 degrees to my body, because the irons are a lot flatter than putters are designed. So you can actually use that technique here and have the shaft coming somewhat out of your stomach. There's no need to have your arms completely extended out. Rather, it's easier if they're a little bit loose and relaxed and you're not so tight, where it's just comfortable for you to hold the club like this. And then you can get down on the ground. So my setup position from the back, I'll show you all sides of it, would look like this. Here's my setup position from the rear. Notice my body is very open to the target. You see mostly my back. From this position, it would look like this. I have my rear foot parallel with my club face, essentially. I have my right foot in this direction, maybe even slightly inward. I'm very much open to the target this way. I lock in that position. And then I turn back with the body, and then you come back through. This is a very simple motion, and it's very easy to repeat this. It's very similar to a putt, except it's not so much shoulder rocking. It's more of a rotational thing like this. But from this position, this makes this very easy. And this is my setup for chipping. On chipping, I pretty much play the ball on the inside and the back. So your position wants to look something like this. I'll show you from this side also. This is my setup and posture position. If I were going to hit the ball straight to the camera. There's a couple of things that are very important when you're chipping the ball. One of those things is you want to have the shaft lean forward, or in other words, you want your hands in front of the club head. The hands lead, the club head follows. We do not want the club head to be passing us through the shot the way we would on a normal golf shot. When we're chipping, very much like putting, we keep the hands moving forward towards the target and keep the hands in front of the club head so that the club head is dragging behind. When we can keep the shaft angle forward, this helps the club travel downward through impact as opposed to traveling up. Many times people try to chip with the shaft vertical or even with the shaft slightly or with the hand slightly behind, and there's no way that we can make the club travel downward with the hands behind the club. We need to maintain the hands in front so that the club will naturally travel downward as we go into the ball and not try to flip the ball. Notice that when we take our strokes here, we are not trying to flip it nor hit it with the hands and the arms. We are turning and hitting it very much from our core, like this. Notice my wrists are never breaking. The left hand, the back of my hand is traveling towards my target. This is my chip swing. Following through on the thought that we definitely, when we chip, we want to catch the ball primarily first. We do not want to hit behind the ball. Having the shaft bent forward aids us in a descending blow. So we can catch the ball first and then the ground, or just brush the ground. And the other thing that helps that is having your weight very much on your left side, on your left foot. When I chip, my weight is very much balanced on my left side so that I'm moving forward through the shot and not falling behind. If I fall behind the shot, you'll tend to hit behind the ball, chili dip, hit it fat. But having your weight on the front promotes a downward blow and hitting the ball first. It's always better to hit it a little bit skinny, a little bit thin, than hitting it fat. Fat chips don't tend to work so well. Skinny will still get the ball advancing. So having weight forward promotes you hitting the ball first and promotes a descending blow, along with having the hands forward with the shaft lean. The shaft lean, I just want the shaft lean far enough so that it matches my arm. I don't want this going on, and I don't really want too much of this going on. Just somewhere where it's fairly close to the same angle as my left arm or your lead arm. Now, to find your impact position, stand straight out with your club like this, with your grip, and then turn your body but leave the club in the same position about 45 degrees this way. Just turn your entire body. This is pretty much going to be your impact position, or somewhere close to that. You'll know exactly what that feels like for you, but find that position, and it is going to be with your chest and body slightly open. Once you find that position, then turn your right foot back open some, so it's at least square with the target or somewhere close, perpendicular to your target line. And then from there, you can bend over and put the club flat on the ground. So notice from this side, it would look like this. I get my open position, and I like to step in with the right foot and then bend at the waist and put the club on the ground. Now I know that I need the ball about in that position, so this would be my setup for my chip swing and my posture. Notice my spine is rather straight. I'm not very tense, I'm not very rigid, I'm not fully extended, I'm not really locked in. I'm kind of well balanced and very comfortable. I'm not hunched over. I'm almost standing straight up, but just a little bit squatted, just enough so I can put the club on the ground and have a slight spinal tilt. In my posture, once again, notice that the club is kind of out at 90 degrees from my body when I start. This gives me some idea of how the shaft is going to move, because it's moving, perpendicular to my axis of rotation, which is my spine. And notice my arms are not completely straight. They're somewhat very much bent like they are in a putt, because this is an extension with a putt. You can think of chipping as hitting a putt but with an open stance. And you can even practice putting this way too. Many times I like to approach certain putts from an open stance with the same concept in mind. But going back to chipping, essentially when we're chipping, we're just using our putting stroke but with the other irons and not the putter. So I would put my club out and prepare the shot. My arms are very relaxed and bent. They don't have to be straight out. I just let them fall naturally at my side, slightly forward, come down to the ball, and then I would chip it from here. You see, with this stroke, I can really gently brush the grass. Now I'm on top of a green surface here, and you think, oh my God, he's chipping on a green surface, but I'm not going to do any damage to the grass because I've done this so many times. I'm not going to dig any divots this way. I can just brush the top of the grass without hurting the grass and pick the balls clean like that, virtually from any lie, because it's just really a putt. I can just it's a very controlled thing. I'm choking it down. I'm very much in control of the club head. And I have repeated this motion an innumerable amount of times. That's going to do it for today. Some foundations on chipping. So get yourself in a mirror in your room, in your house, or in a window, and check your setup out. and make sure that you can set up like this so you can continue. We're going to pick it up next time on a little bit more details about how to swing it and the methods that we're going to use for chipping. There are a couple. And check your setup so that it looks something like this. Look at yourself in a mirror so you can have a position such that you get sort of this thing going where your hands are in front of the club quite a bit. You see there's quite a bit of shaft lean there. And the setup is going to be where the club is about even with my rear foot. This happens to be the place where the club bottoms out for me. About right here. Notice my left foot is way open because I am standing open. I'm open to the target in this position. Check your own setup out versus these in a mirror. And once you can do this and set yourself up in this position, you'll be in good position to chip the ball. Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Remember, videos come out every Sunday in the morning, and we're going to pick it up with chipping. We're going to be on chipping for a little while. We have a few videos to do on this, just like putting. We're trying to cover these things exhaustively. For all of you who subscribed, really appreciate it. More content coming up.